Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to write a method section for qualitative research. So welcome and let's get started. You're here because you're interested in publishing qualitative research in the field of education, and most of education uses APA format. So today we'll be looking not just at how to report your methods, but how to report your methods using the journal article reporting standards that are used by most APA journals. APA has adopted a set of journal article reporting standards that are used widely across education journals, and the goal is to ensure that everyone has a common understanding of what's expected to be included to have transparent, replicable research. So understanding the journal article reporting standards will help reviewers provide appropriate evaluation. It will help you know what the reviewers and editors are looking for, and it overall will just improve the quality and transparency in reporting research. So you can learn more about the JARS by going directly to the APA website. The link is reported down below, and there are all kinds of resources available for you there, such as videos and checklists, so please check it out. Because of the diverse approaches used in qualitative research, there will be variations in how you'll be reporting your methods. However, there are some things that are in common. So all method sections will include a research design overview, description of the study participants or the data sources that you'll be using, information about the recruitment process for your participants, information about data collection, and the analyses that you plan on doing. So we're going to be looking at each of these 5 elements in turn and what are the journal article reporting standards for each of these. You'll begin your method section with the research design overview. That's typically about a paragraph in length. And what it does is it provides the reader with an understanding of your study's research design, the mile-high view. So you'll include, for example, information about the data collection strategies for data analysis, and if it's illuminating and useful to know, you'll also discuss the approach to inquiry. Are you doing descriptive research, or feminist, or post-positivist, or a critical theory, or pragmatic approaches? Another thing that's also important to do is provide a rationale for the design that you're using if you hadn't already described it in the introduction. So if the reader doesn't understand why you're using the approach you are, you'll provide an explanation in the research design overview. The next step is describing the study participants or the data sources. In many qualitative studies, the researcher and the research team themselves are important. And if it's involving human participants, then you're going to want to provide information about you and your research team in approaching the study, and you'll emphasize any demographic features that are particularly relevant, any prior experiences or understanding that might shape your understanding of the phenomenon in question. What kind of training have you had? What are the values? What are the decisions in selecting the materials to analyze? So those are all things that are really important for the reader to help contextualize your study. In describing the participants or other data sources, you'll want to describe the number of participants, documents, or events analyzed. And for human participants, you're going to want to provide information about demographic background, cultural information, what kinds of perspectives they have, characteristics of the data sources that they're using. If you're using existing data sources like data sources from the internet or media or archives, such as studying Twitter threads about a particular issue, then you'll provide information about that. You'll also, there are a lot of video and training, for example, for Head Start programs. There's a number of training professional development videos. You may analyze those and you'll describe the source and how you got them. If it's an archival search, then you'll describe your process for locating data for analysis. So if you're doing a systematic literature review, then you'll describe the approach you use to find the literature. For human participants, you might describe as well the researcher-participant relationship. So what kind of interactions and relationships were between the researchers and participants that are relevant to the research process? So was there an existing prior relationship? Those existing relationships could be either helpful or harmful. So if you're recruiting teachers and using the school administration as part of your research team in recruiting, then that could potentially be helpful, or it could also be harmful. So you'll describe the specific dynamics that might be in place and disclose that. So again, readers can have a better understanding of the context of your study. In addition to describing your participants, it's also critical to explain how you recruited your participants. So you'll describe the recruitment process, whether it was face-to-face, email, support, and any protocols that you might have used for the recruitment process. You'll describe the process for determining the number of participants in relation to your study design and the rationale for halting data collection, such as saturation. If appropriate, you'll describe whether or not there are any incentives or compensations for participation, and you'll provide assurance of relevant ethical processes of data collection and consent processes, such as IRB adaptations that you might have incorporated for vulnerable populations. For part of the recruitment process, you may also find that you had to change in the number of participants due to attrition, and the final number of participants and sources might have changed, or you might find that there were high refusal rates. So you'll be sure to report any changes in number due to attrition, and also if there was a large number, or what was the refusal rate. So how many people you approached and how many actually volunteered to participate. So if it's different than stated, the study purpose that was conveyed to the participants. In other words, you want to make sure that the reader is clear of what the participants thought they were getting into in participating in your study. For participant selection, so you've got a pool of participants, potential participants that you've recruited. You'll describe how you selected the participants. Was it purposive sampling methods? Was it convenient sampling using snowball methods? Was sampling based on theoretical issues? Was it based to maximize diversity within your sample? And you'll have very clear information about inclusion and exclusion criteria. Again, especially with qualitative research, who actually is in the study can have a huge influence on your outcomes. And so you want to be clear and transparent in how these participants were recruited and how they were selected for participation. In addition, you'll provide information about the general context of the study, such as when data were collected and the sites, and how it was done. If your selection is from an archive data set, so looking at teacher practices in videos from a huge data set of different teachers teaching, what you may do is you may select some of the videos and not all of them. So you'll make it very explicit in how you selected particular items to be included in your study and what was excluded. In your methods section, you'll include information about how the data were collected. For example, you might state the form of data collected, whether you used interviews, observations, media. You'll describe the origins or evolution of the data collection protocol that you've used. You'll describe any alterations to the strategies in response to the evolving findings or study rationale. In describing the data selection or data collection process, you'll answer questions such as if others were present or involved in the data collection, the number of times data were collected, if you're doing classroom observations, for example, the duration of each session. You'll explain the context. Were they done in general classrooms? Were they interviews over Zoom? And you'll convey the extensiveness of engagement required of your participants. So for example, for interviews and written studies, you'll include the mean and the range of time duration in the data collection process. Additionally, you'll describe the management or use of reflexivity in the data collection process and describe any questions asked in data collection, including the content of central questions and the form of the questions, whether the questions were open-ended or closed-ended. So that helps the reader understand the measures that you used and the types of questions you asked. And in some cases, you might even include a script for an interview, for example. And you'll next include how the data were collected. Were the interviews audio taped and then transcribed? Were there visual recordings, field notes, transcription processes? So you'll have information about the data collection process. You'll end your method section with a discussion of the analyses you carried out, and that includes both data analytic strategies and methodological integrity. So in discussing the data analytic strategies, you'll describe the methods and the procedures you used and why you used them, including detail about the process for analysis. So what were the coding schemes that you used? Did you use thematic analysis? How did you arrive at those procedures? So you want to provide transparency in these methods. And you'll also describe the training and inter-rater reliability among the coders and the analysts. In doing so, you'll also describe in detail the coding categories that you used and whether they were developed based on a theoretical framework a priori or whether they emerged from your data analysis. And you want to be clear as well, what was the unit of analysis? So for example, are you looking at mother-child dyads? Are you looking at full transcripts or individual utterances? You want to be clear in what the unit of analysis was. And when relevant, you're going to provide descriptions of the process for arriving at the analytic scheme and illustrations and descriptions of the analytic scheme. So for example, for your coding, for the codes that you use for your coding scheme, you'll have the different codes, you'll describe what the different codes are, and you'll also provide examples to illustrate what those codes actually look like and are operationalized. If you used software for your data analysis, you'll indicate what software you used. Finally, you'll end with providing evidence of the trustworthiness of your data and data analysis, and in doing so, you will assess the adequacy of your data to capture the forms of diversity most relevant to your research question, goals, and inquiry approach. You'll describe your own perspectives and how they were managed in both data collection and data analysis. You're going to demonstrate how your findings are grounded in evidence, such as the use of quotes and excerpts. You'll demonstrate your findings are meaningful in relation to the literature and study goals. You'll provide relevant context for your findings, and you'll present your findings in a coherent manner that makes sense of any contradictions or just confirming evidence that you might have found in your study. It's critical to show consistency regarding the analytic process or responses to inconsistencies. And finally, you'll describe how support for your claims was supplemented by any checks added to the analyses. For example, did you conduct member checks to ensure that you were capturing what they had intended? So you've got all the ingredients in place in how to write your method section. Good luck.